Hey guys, welcome back. Bolt Spider here, and today we have the reveal of the Abyss archetype. As I am sitting here eating my dinner, you can see all these tabs up, and lovely Noah TRL translated everything, but YGO was super slow on this because they didn't want to use anyone else's translations because their rules are very not good in the Discord server. And the link says, I can't believe I already wasted the Raining Men reference. So first off, this is a deck that I highly anticipated for, on top of guessing correctly of what type it was going to be, being Reptile. So overall, let's go right into it. So we have Null Dredge of the Abyss. It is a light Reptile 0/0. You can only use this card's first and second effect once per turn. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. Send one dark reptile monster from your deck to the graveyard. It is a Foolish Burial on top of the Foolish Burial of Snake Rain. If you control no monsters, or control an Abyss monster, you could special summon this card from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. You cannot special summon monsters while this card is special summoned by this effect in the monster zone, except reptile monsters. So overall, it is an archetype Foolish Burial, which is very good. Now we have Nihil Dredge of the Abyss. It is a dark reptile with 0 attack and 2000 defense. You can only use this card's name first and second effect once per turn each. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. Send one light reptile monster from your deck to the graveyard. So this is your Foolish Burial for the light ones. That's completely fine, even though they don't really need it because of Snake Rain. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one Abyss spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. The Stratos for the deck for spells and traps. Now we have Flogi Haze of the Abyss. It is the light reptile 1800, 1400, and let's see what it does. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard or special summoned from the graveyard, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls and one monster in your graveyard with equal or higher attack. Special summon the target in the opponent's graveyard to their field, and if you do, send the target they control to the grave. So, target one face-up monster your opponent controls and one monster. Okay, so it swaps out. This is an interesting effect, as it is a swap removal. And then we have, if this card is in your graveyard, send one card from your hand from your hand to the graveyard. Add this card to your hand. It would have been better if it said special summon this card, but overall, let's see what the opposite one. Za, Haze of the Abyss, 1517. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard or special summoned, you can have your opponent draw one card, and if they do, you can add one Abyss monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this. Then each player send one card from their hand to the graveyard. If this card is in your graveyard, okay, it has that same exact effect. So that's actually pretty fine, because what it does is have your opponent draw one, and you search out Abyss, and then it's pretty much a Dark World dealing, but you get to draw or search the card that you want, and your opponent draws a random card. So that's interesting. Now we have Cursed Dawn of the Abyss. Okay, it is a level 8, 400 attack, 2400 defense reptile. If this card is in your graveyard, tribute one monster. Special summon this card, then your opponent can special summon one monster from their graveyard to their field, but its effects are negated. If this card is special summoned, you could target one level 4 or lower Abyss monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field. So this is like a shallow grave type card, as it summons from the graveyard, and also it gets your level 4 or lower Abyss monsters from your graveyard to your field to trigger their effects. And then we have Leth, Dusk of the Abyss, a dark reptile with 2000 attack, 800 defense, and it's another level 8. If this card is in your graveyard, you contribute one monster, special summon this card from your hand. Then your opponent can add one monster from their graveyard to their hand. If this card is special summoned, target 2 of your banished monsters, including at least one reptile monster, return them to the grave. This card's not going to get ran. It might be a 1 of at most. Then we have the level 8 Aaron, King of the Abyss. 2500 attack, 2800 defense. You can only use each effect once per turn of the first, second, and third effect. If this card is in your graveyard, tribute 2 monsters, special summon this card. If your opponent adds a card from their deck, adds a card to the hand, except during the draw phase, send 1 random card from their hand to the graveyard. If a monster your opponent controls is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add 1 light or dark reptile monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand, except Aaron. So this is very interesting, and actually no, this is actually a very good card. As your opponent, if they were to add a card, except during the draw phase, you just pluck a card out of your opponent's hand. That's, in my opinion, very good. And then if a monster your opponent controls is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, and adding a light and a dark, that's very good. Then we have Immuniza, Queen of the Abyss. If this card is in your graveyard, tribute 2 monsters special on this card. It also has 2700 attack, 2100 defense. If a monster is special summoned from your opponent's graveyard, you can send 1 card they control to the graveyard. So she pairs well with Curse. That is very interesting. If a monster is sent from your opponent's hand or deck to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 light or dark reptile monster from your graveyard, except another queen. So she pairs well with the king. No, pairs well with Dusk. That's interesting. Now we have Odo Abyss, the Deity of the Abyss. 3100 attack, 2200 defense. It is a level 10, so you could essentially play Gustav Max into Libby. If this card is in your graveyard, tribute 3 monsters, special summon this card once while face up on the field. Quick effect, you could send all monsters on the field to the graveyard except face up monsters that were special summoned from this effect. This is a board wipe, and if your opponent controls all monsters that were just summoned from the hand in extra deck, everything just goes away except this. This card is very, very great, but for high cost. Now we have Depths of the Abyss. You can only use this card's name, actually the first and second effect each turn. If a face-up reptile monster you control is destroyed by battle or opponent's card effect, target 1 card your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. If this card in your field zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you could send you could send cards from the top of your opponent's deck to the graveyard equal to the number of reptile monsters with different names in your graveyard. This card is interesting as it is a spot removal, and it mills equals X amount of reptiles in graveyard. Overall, this card is definitely interesting, I could say for sure. Now we have Emptiness of the Abyss. I'm having flashbacks of Vanity's Emptiness right now. You can only use the first effect once per turn. During the main phase, you contribute 1 reptile monster, then target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your field, but send it to the graveyard during the end phase. Well, that went from 1 to 100 fast. If this face-up card in the Spell Trap card zone is sent to the graveyard, send all face-up non-reptile monsters you control to the graveyard. That's a fair trade and balance. On top of the fact you can summon anything from your opponent's graveyard and link it away. That's pretty good. And then looks like we have a trap trick target being Invasion of the Abyss. You can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. Special summon to Abyss tokens. Okay. Which are level 2, attack, 0, and defense. Sure. If you have 8 or more Abyss monsters with different names in your graveyard, you can apply this effect instead. Special summon 2 reptile monsters with different names from your graveyard. Oh no. At least it's a hard up. Very hard up. This is very good. And it is a deck and a half. So some of the cards to note. when you are building this deck. One of the cards that is getting reprinted is being Snake Rain. If you guys don't know what Snake Rain does, Snake Rain is a card that states, discard one card from your hand, select 4 reptile monsters from your deck, and send them to the graveyard. Other cards to consider as well. You have Viper's Rebirth. If the only monsters in your graveyard are reptile monsters, select 1 non-tuner monster in your graveyard, special summon it. It is destroyed during the end phase. That's fine. Another card on top of that is King of the Feral Imps, as it searches out everything, and it is also a dark reptile. And the final card I want to mention is Reptilian Lamnia. So Reptilian Lamnia is a turn 2 card. And what Lamnia does is, if this card is in your hand and all monsters you control are face up reptile monsters, minimum 1, target 1 monster your opponent controls, changes attack to 0, and if you do, special summon this card. Then take damage equal to the monster's original attack. If this card is sent to the graveyard as a synchro material, you can target 2 face-up monsters on the field, change their attacks to 0, and you can only use 1 Reptilian Lamnia effect per turn, and only 1 set's turn. Now, what are some reptile synchro monsters or extra deck monsters that we have? So overall, this is why EDO Pro I like. We have 4 synchros, being Hydra, Golgar, Hastor, and Purple Pyrotile. You are most likely going to try and make something like Hydra, because that is a level 6. And Lamnia is a lovely, lovely level 2. And then let's take a look at XYZs. We have Jormungandr, never going to make it. Gagagigo the Risen, no. And King of Feral Imps, very good. Then we have something like a fusion. Worm Zero, not going to run it. Then we have links. You have Alien Shock Trooper Mighty Frame and Reptilian Echna. Overall, the options are very limited, but at the end of the day, this deck, I could see definitely doing some impact because of how the tempo is of the deck. It reminds me of a slower format, very tempo paced. But if you open up double Snake Rain, have fun, because you just discard Snake Rain off of Snake Rain. But overall, my thoughts on this deck: artwork amazing. I'm gonna have to test it out. But anyways, see you guys in the next video, and goodbye.